Good morning. Another day, another Bible study. So glad that you are with us as we work through the Whole50 Bible study. Today, day 4, where we talk about just a bunch of rocks and I guess maybe question mark. We're in Joshua chapter 4, verses 1 through 9, and our study guide for the 50 days is right here, the Whole50 Bible study. So glad for those of you who have participated in donating to ChristTable today and have received these in the mail. Actually, they're flying through the mail right now, in that kind of had a run on them over the last couple of days, and supply is getting low. So if you want one of these, I would definitely love to send one to you. All you need to do is go to ChristTable today, and anyone who donates there will be sent one of those through the mail as quickly as possible. But you don't need to donate, and you don't need to have one of those guides in order to participate in the Bible study. Is it helpful? Yes, but you can participate for here for free each and every day. Today, we are, as I said, in the book of Joshua, chapter 4, verses 1 through 9, and it actually kind of dovetails really well with yesterday's Bible study. So if you've not seen day 3, I'm going to encourage you to go back and read and participate in day 3's Bible study. Watch it. You can watch it on YouTube or on the Facebook archive. But either way, I think you will enjoy today's study. If you've never heard this story before out of the Bible, it'll be new to you. It's interesting. So Joshua chapter 4, verse 1, without any further delay, when all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, who was the leader after Moses of the people of Israel. So he stepped into Moses' shoes in order to take them into the promised land. So they've been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, wandering and wandering. My Midwest accent there makes it hard to understand where I'm saying W-O, wandering, or W-A, wandering. Anyway, when all the people had crossed the Jordan River, which was kind of the barrier, the line between the wilderness of Sinai and the promised land, the Lord said to Joshua, I want you to choose 12 men, one from each tribe. So there were 12 tribes. Tell them to take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. And so this was a very holy place, a very sacred place where the priests were standing. In fact, anywhere where the priest stood was holy or sacred, but specifically it was holy because they were carrying with them the holiest item that was a part of their journey, the most sacred item, and that was the Ark of the Covenant. So Joshua says for these 12 men to gather up stones right from the place where the priests were standing, right out of the middle of the riverbed of the Jordan, which had dried up so that they could cross over, and then carry them out and pile them up at the place where you will camp tonight. And so pick up 12 big stones, and I want you to carry them all the way the rest of the day until the camping place. That was God's instructions. So Joshua called together the 12 men that he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. Now, what's happening here is they are about to build, with each of these 12 stones, a cairn. Now, sorry, I didn't type in how you spell that. It's written out in the Bible study for today, but that's Cairn, but it's pronounced cairn, Cairn. Essentially, what that is it's a pile of rocks, a pile of stones. You can see these even around the world today. Some of them are still left over from ancient times. Many of them have been built recently over the last few years, oftentimes on on the summits of mountains as a landmark that's the summit of the mountain, or in other places in order to remind people that this is an important location. And so, not just for centuries, but for millennia and even longer, people have been piling stones as reminders that something of landmark significance happened in this location, or this is a landmark significant location. Were the Israelites the first ones to do this at God's command? I don't know. It's possible that the first people who did this type of thing were um, the Israelites at God's command, and it stuck, and people have been doing it for thousands of years since. Or it could be that it started in some other way, and God and the Israelites essentially said, this is a really great tool for us to use. But either way, God essentially says to them, I want you to pick up 12 stones. I want you to carry them until you get to the camp tonight. And this is what God is about to have them do, is set them up as one of these. So let's keep reading. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. And he told them, I want you to go into the middle of the Jordan River in front of the ark of the Lord your God. And each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulder, 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, what I love about this is that it's not one tribe picking up 12 stones. It's not just 12 random individuals. It's strategic in that God essentially says, I want everyone to participate, or I want everyone to have a hand in this. So we have a family of 6, 4 kids, Sally and I. So it would be, if I were doing this, I could just say to the 4 kids, go and each of you pick up 4 stones, and the 2 oldest pick up 2 more. So we'll have 6 stones. Or I could just go and pick up all 6 of the stones. Or I could tell one of the kids, just go back and forth, shuttle them. Get one, bring it here, get one, bring it here. But what God says is essentially, I want each of you individually to go and pick up a stone and carry it. And so what we see here is that there is a need for everyone to participate. There's a desire on God's behalf for everyone to have a hand in this. Now, obviously, there were thousands of people who were a part of this. They're not going to use thousands of stones here, but each tribe is going to be represented. So maybe think of your extended family. Every aunt and uncle, every cousin, every piece of your extended family, grandparents, each of those family units have their own stone, and you're going to bring them together into one kern, into one landmark, so that everybody is able to say, I had a role to play in that. I had a part to play in that. When you see that stone right there is me. It's mine. So whenever someone from the 12 tribes looked at that kern, they could look and they could say, yeah, 4th stone down, that one's me. That one's us. That's our family right there. So 12 stones in all, one for each of the tribes of Israel. Verse 6, we will use these stones to build a memorial. Now the memorial that they build is a kern, but it's more than just a pile of rocks. This pile of rocks has significance, really important. It's not just busy work. It's not just an opportunity for Joshua to give the people something to do. It's not a throwaway activity. It has significance, which is why Joshua calls it a memorial. So he obviously understands what God's intent is with this, is that this landmark is going to be something more than just a pile of stones in the middle of the desert, or a pile of stones on the summit of a mountain. It's going to stand or represent something much more important than just the stones themselves. So in the future, your children will ask, what do these stones mean? So down the road, people are going to obviously walk by this construction, and they're going to say, yeah, that's not natural. What does that mean? So, Stonehenge. We don't really fully know what Stonehenge is there for. Have some real educated guesses as to why it was built and what its use was. But at the end of the day, mostly conjecture as to what Stonehenge was built for, how it was built, why it was built, and what it was used for. The statues of Easter Island, the same thing. Most of these ancient constructions that we still have, they have lost their meaning or significance. And so they're still there for people to see, but we don't understand the significance anymore. It's been lost to time because the stories didn't get passed down well enough from generation to generation. And so now, in the future, we ask, what is Stonehenge? What does it mean? The Easter Island statues, what do they mean? And we don't have an answer. God says, through Joshua, it's your responsibility to pass along the meaning of these stones, the meaning of this story, so that it isn't lost to time, so that the significance remains as important generations from now as it is to this generation. And this is what you're going to tell them the significance of the stones are. They're going to remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Lord's Ark of the Covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. So the men did as Joshua had commanded them. And so there it is. The story that they were supposed to tell their children, and their children were supposed to tell their children, and then great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren from generation to generation, is that this is the location, this is the place where a miracle happened. The miracle of the Jordan River stopping flowing so that the Ark of the Covenant could cross over from the wilderness of Sinai into the land of Canaan, into the Promised Land. But also I think that that would also be a reminder to them to tell the story of the Exodus out of Egypt and the wilderness wanderings and why they were there for 4 decades before moving into the Promised Land. And so that simple physical structure is an entry point, it's a gateway into an entire conversation about the miracles and the dramatic ways in which God worked and moved on their behalf. And that was a story they were supposed to continue to tell. And maybe without the landmark memorial, without the stones, there would be no opportunity for that story to be told. And so every time they walk by and the kids see the stones, hey, why are those there? Oh yeah, that's the story that I'm supposed to tell you about this. Let me tell you about that story. You're going to like this story. But without the landmark, without the memorial, it's unlikely that the story would have been told as much as it was, and maybe the whole story of the wilderness wanderings would have been forgotten to time, would have been left in generations past. And so the men did as Joshua had commanded them, and this is where we stop, verse 9. So this is still verse 8. So they took the 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan River, one from each tribe, just as the Lord had told Joshua. They carried them to the place where they camped for the night, Gilgal, and constructed the memorial there. Joshua also set up another pile of 12 stones right in the middle of the Jordan River at the place where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant were standing. So the priests began to carry the Ark of the Covenant into the water. Whenever their feet hit the water stops flowing. They walk into the middle of the Jordan River and they stand there and they wait for all of the people to cross the Jordan River. The river still stops flowing as long as the Ark of the Covenant is in the middle of the Jordan River. And so once everybody has gotten across the Ark of the Covenant, then now is at the end of the crowd. It was leading the procession, but now everyone has crossed over safely. Now it's at the end of the procession. It leaves the Jordan River and the water begins flowing again, as the story goes. So Joshua essentially says, while the Ark of the Covenant is still standing in the middle, and the riverbed is dry, let's go ahead and get the stones and put them in the middle there. So they built 2 of these. Now, if you read through the book of Joshua and other places in Scripture, you're going to see multiple places where God or the leader instructs them to build these cairns as landmarks or as memorials. So this wasn't a one-time thing, and here we even have indication that there were two of them that were built, one at Gilgal, where they camped for the night, the first night that they camped in the Promised Land that they've been dreaming about for centuries, and then another one in the middle of the Jordan River. So I think, this is a great principle. We will decline that call. I think that this is a great principle for, especially for parents, for families, for grandparents, for anyone who has someone coming up and along behind them, of the power of memorials, the power of landmarks. The Lord's Supper is a landmark. It's a memorial, something that we have been commanded to continue to do as an opportunity to remember. And there are other ones perhaps in Scripture that you can think of as well. But a couple of things that I think of here is that throughout the Bible, God puts great emphasis on parents being responsible for their children in His ways. And this is a little bit where we get the tie into yesterday. And I don't want to downplay, and I said this yesterday too, I don't want to downplay the significance of age-appropriate ministry to kids and to youth. But in a lot of ways, I think that over the years, we as religious institutions have done a disservice to the training of children, and almost maybe done what God asked us not to do in segregating out all of these age divisions within the church. Preschoolers, you go here. Children, you go here. Preteens, tweens, you go here. Middle schoolers, you go here. High schoolers, you go here. Young adults, you go here. One of the primary reasons that pastors hear for people not choosing a particular church is often on the basis of segregated ministry. You don't have a singles program. I'm going to find another church that does. You don't have a college age program. I'm going to find another church that does. You don't have the 4, 5, and 6 graders broken out from the children's ministry. I'm going to find a church that does. And so we're looking in a lot of ways for this a la carte, just for the finite time period that I'm in. I want the church to minister directly to me and to that particular need, and I don't want to be a part of other age groups or life stages. And I think that God must kind of laugh at us, because so much of what we see is in diametric opposition to that. A God who seems to indicate that intergenerational is His preference, and that really it's not the religious institution's responsibility to teach children in spiritual ways, to teach young people in spiritual ways, but it's the parents' job. So many people come and just drop their kids off at the church, at the religious institution, and say, here, teach them. Go shopping, go hang out, go do whatever, pick them up. Kid never hears or sees anything religious from their parents other than the drive to and from the religious institution the next week for youth program. It's a good start. I don't want to downplay the helpfulness of that. Some is better than none, and way to go, parents, for doing that. But it's an entryway. It's a gateway. It's not God's best plan. God's best plan throughout the Bible puts a very strong emphasis on parents instructing their kids in God's ways, in setting up memorials and landmarks, and in knowing what they mean and being able to pass along their faith to their children. Why do so many parents hand over the responsibility for teaching their children the faith to the church? Because they don't feel as though they understand the faith well enough on their own to do so. Maybe that's the parents' fault. Maybe it's a failure of the modern church to fully train parents and help them feel equipped and to be equipped enough to handle their children. And I don't know that too often we as pastors and ministers have done that, because we'd much rather have a number to gloat about in the children's ministry or in the youth ministry than we would do the harder thing, which is teach adults how to teach. Teach them how to fish. It's a complicated problem. It's not an easy solution. I'm not railing against the church or parents, but throughout the Bible, it's clear that God puts great emphasis on parents, not the religious institution, not the church being responsible for instructing children. Maybe parents don't give themselves enough credit. I think you know more than you think you do. And this, finally, God knows that we are inclined to forget. So he consistently encourages us to create remembrance reminders. I think that part of the reason why so many parents and adults seem so ill-equipped to teach their faith, to pass it along to other people, is because we have created this idea that you have to be a biblical scholar in order to have the ability to train or to teach other people. It's just not that way. Whenever we see Jesus in Scripture, Jesus is using anything at hand as an opportunity to teach. He uses a meal around tables. In fact, he picks up bread, he picks up a cup of wine, and he uses it as an opportunity to not only institute the Lord's Supper, which is a remembrance reminder. As you see right down there, the Lord's Supper is a remembrance reminder. But he also just uses it as an opportunity to teach. Along the road, he uses fig trees as an opportunity to teach. He uses the wind, the waves, boats. He uses rocks. He uses plants. He uses seeds and farmers. He uses whatever is at hand and whatever is there. Jesus is always using as an opportunity to help teach individuals about God and about faith. Just use whatever's around you, whatever comes to mind. And I think that one of the most powerful things that you can use as a remembrance reminder is your own life, is your own journey, is your own story. Simply tell your kids or your grandkids your story of faith. I always felt like because I didn't have a story that involved a whole bunch of drug use or sex or running off the rails as a kid, I didn't have a story that was worth telling. That's not true. There's something powerful about your spiritual journey, the ups and the downs. And to your kids and to your grandkids and to those people in your family, there is something doubly powerful about your story. It helps them get to know you better and you more, and God as well. And so just start by sharing your story. And in so doing, you will be creating cairns in your own life, just like Joshua did, just like Jesus did. And in that way, you will be walking the way of Jesus. Until tomorrow, happy reading.